We have been in a series called In the Waiting Room, and the subtitle, the theme, the focus is embracing the process of purpose. And, you know, we all have a purpose. Do you believe that? Everyone in here has a God-given purpose. Now, some of us are still searching that out. What is it? What am I called to? What is my life supposed to look like 5 years from now, 10 years from now? Maybe you're in a place of retirement and you're like, I've already fulfilled my purpose. Well, I can guarantee you that you have not totally fulfilled your purpose. And we all have something to move forward towards. We all have something to continue to achieve. And as a result, we all have to embrace process. And most of us in this room, right, don't like the pain of the waiting when it comes to process, do we? I mean, how many really enjoy the painful part of waiting? I mean, there's actually enjoyment in elements of the waiting process, but there's also lots of pain in the process. So this whole series has been about embracing the process of purpose and really, you know, setting ourselves up, positioning ourselves up for success. And the first week, I'm just going to do a little bit of a recap for you. The first week, we laid out some groundwork regarding Joseph's life, who Joseph is, because as you know, if you've been here, we've been camping out and are going to continue to camp out for 5 weeks in the life of Joseph. Now, I'm not really exegetically breaking down everything, every verse by verse, but I am going to give you a little bit of a summary of Joseph's life and how he learned to embrace the process of purpose, even in the midst of pain. But the first week, as I said, we laid some groundwork of Joseph's life, and the message was called The Makings of a Legend, Favor Feels Unfair. And so like I said, we talked about the dreams that Joseph had as a 17-year-old boy. Talked about the favor that he had by his father, Jacob. He was the 11th son of 12, and had lots of special attention from the father. He was the firstborn of Jacob's favorite wife, Rachel, who had already died at this point. And so, you know, I kind of laid some groundwork about even the coat of many colors that Jacob placed upon Joseph. And then the second week, we talked about, my message was called, as you saw last week via video, Life in the Pits. Everyone say, I'm wearing deodorant today. It's funny because my second oldest is, her name is Victory, and there's a movie, I don't know if you've seen it, it's called Mr. Peabody and Sherman. Some of you have seen it. Anyways, it's like a kid's movie, and we watched it. I was going to show the clip last week, but it didn't work out. But there's a scene in the movie, and this is kind of what I was kind of going for last week. I don't know if you got this, but there's a scene in the movie where they go back in time, Mr. Peabody and Sherman. Mr. Peabody's a dog, for those of you who might remember the cartoon, and Sherman, and they go back in time, and they're in this, like, ancient time, and there's this guy that I don't give you all the details, but basically they go back in time, and there's this young girl who goes back in time with Mr. Peabody and Sherman, and she's like, what's that smell? And this big, like, rough and tough dude, lifts up his armpits, and he goes, that's the smell of victory. And every time my daughter Victory sees that, she's like, what? She's like, it's the smell of victory. Well, that's what happens. You know, there's life in the pits. That's what I'm trying to tell you. There's victory found in the pits. And you got to learn to smell it. You got to learn to discern it, see it. And sometimes you feel like, and this was last week's message, you feel like you're in a pit. You feel like you're in a hard time of life. But that's often where the greatest victories are found if you just learn to smell. If you just learn to see, just learn to discern what God actually is doing. It's the greatest setup for victory and success in your life. So every time you think of victory, just put your hands up and say, that's the smell of victory. Anyways, you got to see the movie. If you have kids, you'll appreciate it. life in the pits. I talked about the persona, the promise, and the paradox of Joseph's life, about the things he had to lay down, the persona being the identity that he began to probably find himself in as the loved one of his father Jacob, had the coat of many colors, the favor. He was the dreamer. He was going to have this big and crazy purpose, and his brothers became jealous of him, and he began to find identity in that. Jacob even utilized Joseph as a supervisor to his brothers to check in on them. And so Joseph just had this special kind of favor. And then when he was thrown in the pit and he had his coat of many colors torn in half and he was thrown in the pit, that's when really the promise in his life was established. That's really when he had to rely on, was this dream a dream from God that I had as a 17-year-old kid? And this was not too long after he had the dreams. And then the last element that we ended off with last week was the paradox that he began to live in his faith journey. After he was in the pit, all of a sudden he had the opportunity to go to literally be so discouraged that to the place where he would have given up. He could have said, I'm in the pit, there's no hope for me, I might as well just give up. But that's when the paradox began. That's when the contradiction, the conflict began to his life, and he had to begin to embrace the process. So this week, my message is called Sold Out. Everyone say sold out. There is always a purpose. There's always a purpose. How many have ever, you've been excited to go somewhere to do something, and you got there and something was sold out? Maybe it was a concert. Maybe it was, your favorite dish at your favorite restaurant, and there was no more fish left. There was no more whatever, your favorite steak left. Or maybe you wanted to buy a certain piece of clothing, and they were sold out of your size. And we've all had an experience like that. I remember, but this is the thing. When we go through those experiences of disappointment, we have to begin to realize that they're probably, if we choose to see, because God cares about every detail of our life, there's always a reason. And there's always a reason, whether we go through good times or bad times. There's always a God reason in the middle of it if we choose to see it. And we pursue God in the context of, God, help me to see the good in every situation. The good, the bad, and the ugly. We could see good in any situation if we see God. You know why? Because God is good. There was a concert, a very well-known pop star came to town a few years ago, and I really wanted to go. I didn't even really like the music at one point in my life, but I began to pray for this individual and I got this heart for this individual, and like I said, it wasn't really my style of music, and this concert sold out at the Corel Center, or Palladium, or Scotiabank Place, or Canadian Tire, whatever it's called. Identity crisis at the highest level. My wife tried to get tickets, and she got stuck on, it froze. I guess when she went online, it froze, and we couldn't get tickets. And then all of a sudden, I think it was within 20, I don't even know, maybe it was like 12 minutes. I don't know. It was like crazy quick. I think it might have been like minutes it was sold out. The whole place was sold out. And I was kind of disappointed, and I'd never seen this pop star before, and I wanted to go. I'd been praying for this individual, and so I sent an email out to somebody very close to this individual, and just saying the situation and asking if there was any other way I could get a ticket, and lo and behold, we ended up getting tickets to this sold-out show, and we actually got better tickets that we would have got probably than if we had bought online. So it was good that it was sold out. We ended up getting such favor, and we literally stood right in front of the stage on the floor. And as a result of it, Michelle and I both went, and we felt like we had an assignment going there, like a spiritual assignment. And it's amazing what God did and how God connected us, and we got to minister to some key individual at this event. But I remember thinking, there is a reason that this concert was sold out. Because God wanted us to get in another way so we could minister, and that was the connection point. And so when you get disappointed in life because of something that's happened, always remember there is a reason. Always remember there is a reason. Now, I'm not saying that God gives you bad to give you a reason to see God. But the reality of it is, we live a life where bad surrounds us, right? Disappointment surrounds us, but we don't have to let it get onto us. You get what I'm saying? Or get into us. We can let good that's inside of us get onto the bad around us. And that's the calling of God over our lives. But this is the thing, whether it's good, a good situation, or a bad situation, whether you believe it was God or not is irrelevant. God can be found in every situation. And there can always be a reason for God to reveal himself to you if you look. And that is the point. That is the ultimate point I want to get across this morning. But, this whole term sold out or being a sellout, I thought of this because, I used to be very, very into the underground music scene. When I say underground, like subculture, I was really, when I first kind of got into music, I was really into the, what would be called punk rock music. But then the style I was into was called skate, it was like skate punk. Really fast, aggressive punk music, not raunchy. It was like clean, like more talented punk rock music. And I was in this scene, and I remember like this whole scene had this sort of this stigma or this persona, this identity issue where it was all about being different. I mean, as a subculture, it had found its identity, and we are a minority. We are independent. We're not part of the mainstream. We're not sold out to the machine. We're not sold out to the system. We're not sold out to we're not commercial. We're not mainstream. And so this term, that in our culture, in this music culture at the time, we were always judging bands that would leave that subculture scene and all of a sudden make it big in the mainstream, and we'd say, oh, they sold out. They were sellouts. Haven't anybody ever heard that term before? They were sellouts, And, looking back at that, I don't know anybody, to some degree, there's this front that we all want to stay there. We all want to find our identity there. But the reality of it is, like, we all are looking for success. And whether it's success or whether it's struggle, there is always a God reason in both if we look. There's always a God reason. And looking back, some of those bands that I would have said sold out back in the day, I'm like, there was a reason for that. There was a reason for that because, they were able to take what they do and some of their value systems and actually broadcast it on a larger scale than they ever could before. And whether it was bad value systems or good value systems, it was their vision. And they've reached, a lot of them have attained or reached a lot of their purpose and vision because they sold out. Now, there's both negative and good attached to that, but I just wanted to give you a little bit of a picture of where we're going this morning. Everyone yell out loud right now, there's always a purpose. There's always a purpose. And my subtitle kind of went back and forth on this because at first I was going to call it There's Always a Reason, and I said there's always a purpose. And sometimes, there's always a reason. You can get the idea that, in every bad situation, there's a reason that God put you in it. I didn't want to give you that frame of mind, but if we look at it like there's always a purpose, there's always a purpose, a God purpose in every situation, our mindset shifts to a different perspective. But there's always a purpose to every hard situation or even good situations. Remember, we have to embrace the process to our purpose. And to do that, we have to see through the pain of the process. If we can't see through the pain within the process, we can't achieve our purpose. If we can't embrace the pain in the midst of the process, we can't achieve our purpose. Process is so vitally important to achieving our purpose. There are moments we feel like we are sold out, we're done, we're finished. Anybody ever felt like you came to a hard spot like Joseph? Like last week we talked about this, he's in a pit. He's in the hardest place he's ever been in his life. He's only known good. He's only known favor. He's only known love. He's only known big vision, big purpose, dreamer. And now all of a sudden, everything is torn. Everything he found his identity in, it was torn in half. His cloak, this cloak of many colors, this status on his life was torn up in many pieces. And now he's in the pit, in a dark pit. He felt probably for a moment, felt absolutely hopeless. Anybody ever been there before? He felt like he was done, he was finished, he was sold out. Well, the story continues, and I'm going to get into this in a little bit, but we all go through seasons where we feel like we're sold out, we're finished, we're done. There's nothing left. There's nothing left. And we feel like darkness surrounds us on every level. And, I thought at one point, and I shared this, we were in California this last week, Michelle and I, and every year we gather. We're part of this. We're part of two things actually out in California. One, where our church here is aligned with a network out in Pasadena, California, called Harvest International Ministries. And but two, my wife and I are also part of this other leaders network of leaders from around the world. There's about 50 of us. And there are different leaders in different industries. Mainly a lot of itinerant senior leaders, a lot of church senior leaders, also a lot of humanitarian social justice efforts, people that are, saving, hundreds, thousands of kids, overseas from the sex industry, human trafficking. There's also film producers. There's actresses and actresses that are part of this, just all doing different things in different areas of the marketplace. And it's an incredible time. And the whole purpose of these gatherings, is to build relationship. It's one thing to build ministry, become a ministry acquaintance with somebody in a green room. And we're friends because I bring you in, or we're friends because I go to your church and I minister. But it's a whole other thing to actually put all that aside and build real relationship. Because how many know we need relationship? And leaders often are some of the most lonely people out there. Most lonely people out there. And we need relationship. We need real relationships. So this is a time where Michelle and I get to rub shoulders with different people from around the world and just be able to be totally vulnerable and real and just honest with what we're going through. And we get to pray for each other. It's incredible, you guys. It's the most incredible, life-giving thing that we could do as a ministry and as leaders. My wife and I doing this. And there are moments in our lives and in my life where I have felt like I've been sold out, I've been done. I wanted to give up. Some of you may be like, really? Just like you, because I'm a normal individual just like you. I'm no different than anybody else. What we do may be different, what our responsibilities may be different, but we all have similar temptation. We all have similar pressure. It just looks different frequency. Different function, different expression. And there have been times that I, honest to God, wanted to throw in the towel. And if I didn't have people like this in my life, who knows what would have happened? I was saying to some people last week, actually, I said, if the last 2 years here as a house have been an incredible journey, there's been the good, there's been bad, and there's been ugly. Okay, you hear what I'm saying? And God has been incredible through all of it. Don't get me wrong, absolutely incredible. And I was thinking about it because we put an offer on this building, this grocery store building. Now it's 2 Aprils ago, so a year and a half ago. And I was thinking about it, if they had said yes, and I thank God for that process because I learned so much in that process. I don't take that back at all. I've learned so much in that process. I've become wiser for it. But we put an offer on this building, and I'm thinking about it. If they had said yes, and we were in a building campaign mode, while everything that was going to go on still went on, I probably would have jumped off a cliff. No, I'm actually serious. I probably would have jumped off a cliff. And so, I'm thankful because we all have moments or potential moments, because we all have pressure in our life where we feel like we've been sold out, we're done. But if we choose to see those moments and say, there's always a purpose. There's a purpose even in our failure. There's a purpose in our success. We're going to get through it. We're going to get through it. And when we meet and we gather as leaders to this thing every week, we find this purpose. There's a reminder of the purpose. Isaiah 45, verse 3, regarding King Cyrus. God speaks this as a decree over King Cyrus, saying, and he's a heathen king. He says, and I will give you treasures hidden in the darkness, secret riches, because treasure is found in darkness. Treasure is found in those pit moments, in those hard moments. And that word for darkness actually means places of obscurity, places even of misery. That I will give you treasures. And that word for treasures and even secret riches is secret storehouses. And we could go on a lot about that and about the storehouse and about what is the storehouse and what does Malachi call the storehouse and are there storehouses full of provision and riches, both natural and spiritual, in heavenly places for you? Absolutely. But in those moments, guess what? If we operate in faith, God will give us treasure even in darkness. We will find the most precious gems, and Jesus is that treasure. Jesus is the treasure in the midst of darkness. He is the light. He is the candle in the midst of a dark place. And I'm talking about Joseph here. Joseph, his name, we talked about this the first week. His name means he will add or bring increase. So Joseph, a picture of Jesus, he will bring increase even in the midst of darkness. Joseph had a dream, and his dream, he didn't even know what the dream meant totally, but he knew one day he'd be the man. And his brothers didn't even know what it meant, but one day he would be like a savior to a whole nation in famine. He was a treasure in darkness, molded and refined in the pits of life. He was that treasure, just like Jesus was the treasure that has saved and changed and transformed all of our lives. And that's the reason why people get baptized, to acknowledge that. There's always a purpose in every hard time. Let's go to Romans 8, verse 26. And I'm just going to share another scripture here with you, and I'll move on to our main passage, 8, verse 26. It says here, meanwhile, the moment we get tired in the waiting, because we all get tired in the waiting, don't we? In the waiting rooms of life, we get tired. I was 6 hours in a waiting room waiting for my wife to hear the verdict. Is she going to die? Is she going to live? What's going on? I'm waiting. And I was getting tired in the waiting, and I had no cell reception. All I had was some worship music and earphones. And so I just had to focus on the Lord and just focus my thoughts on good thoughts. And every time I have a bad thought, I'd go back to a good thought. And it was a battle at times, but I was getting tired in the waiting. And there was a moment where I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to pray. I didn't know what to say. I was just like, God, it's just, You know those moments where you're just like, You're just like, I don't want to talk anymore. Anybody ever get sick of yourself or hearing yourself talk? I do. I'm going to Costa Rica in a few weeks to minister. I'm going to be speaking 16 times in 3 days. I will get sick of hearing myself talk. And so will Matt, because he's come with me. So, Romans 8:26 says here, meanwhile, the moment we get tired in the waiting, God's Spirit is right alongside helping us along. If we don't know how to or what to pray, it doesn't matter. I love that. Oh, but brother, you need to pray the Matthew 6 prayer. Only the Matthew 6 prayer. Or brother, you gotta bring your supplication before God. Paul says it, pray without ceasing, always bringing your request, making your request made known to God, always bringing your request. And there is an element of that, but there is a moment when you get tired in the waiting and you don't know what to do. And I love it. It says that we don't know how or what to pray. It doesn't matter. He does our praying in and for us, making prayer out of our wordless sighs or aching groans. Okay, God, I just got betrayed. My friends backstabbed me. There's gossip going on. I'm in a pit. I feel darkness. I got no money. There's debt. And I've already brought all of my requests. I've been asking you. I've been knocking. I've been seeking. So now I'm at a place where I don't know what to pray. And God's like, it doesn't matter. Just make your sigh known to me. Because I can interpret it. Oh, everyone ever do that? Everyone ever do that? You know, I do that sometimes. In traffic, you're like, oh. Like, everyone ever had those moments? You just don't know what to say, because if you say something, it might be really bad. So it's better to make a groan or a sigh or a moan, you know what I'm talking about? And the Holy Spirit that's actually the Holy Spirit, but the thing is, it doesn't always have to have a word attached to it, because God will see the word. Go to the next verse. He knows us far better than we know ourselves. Thank God. Thank God. He knows us far better than we know ourselves, knows our pregnant condition. Because, if you've been pregnant in here, you know what it's like when you're waiting every day because your due date was, November 10th. And now it's November, whatever it is, 16th. And you've been waiting every day, 12 hours when you're awake, all hour, every minute. You're like, could it be now? Could it be now? Water break. I mean, that's and you're tired in the waiting. But God knows your pregnant condition. God knows how you feel, how heavy you feel, how much you want this thing to come out of you. You know, when we took over this church and we transitioned, that night, because I think it was 10 days overdue, something like that, or 8 to 10 days overdue. And I actually thought the water was going to break on the stage, like in the ceremony. A part of me kind of wanted it, to be honest. That's really weird, I know, but it would have been so cool and so epic. You know, the water it would have been a bad picture. And we would have had it on video. But that night, my wife went into labor. I so like God to do that, you know. For us, when it rains, it really rains. It's like it hurricanes. It doesn't just rain when it rains, and either we're swept up or we get taken up. But His knows our pregnant condition and keeps us present before God. I love that. Go to the next verse. That's why we can be so sure that in every detail in our lives of the love for God is worked into something good. Now, that last verse in the New Living Translation in verse 28 says this, and we know that God causes everything to work together for the good of those who love God and are called according to His purpose for them. I love that. In other words, you can find a God purpose of good in every good, bad, and ugly situation of life. The reason why I say good, why would you need to find good in good situations? Because you also need to see the goodness of God in the good times of life. Because some people are always praying in the bad times, and then all of a sudden good times come and they stop seeking God. So they have good, but they stop seeing the goodness of God. They just kind of rest in the fact that, oh, it was my work. I prayed for 10 years for this. And now I'm just living I'm enjoying the fruit of my labor. And there's an element of truth to that God has answered and God is giving you and God is allowing you to eat the fruit of your labor in prayer, but we can't forget to see the good even in the good. The goodness of God even in the good times of life. But there's always a good part or a good purpose, plan in every situation of life. God has always been about the details. Like I said, when Michelle and I went through this process of her having this life-altering surgery and not knowing what was going to happen and just some of the what-if scenarios that kind of came our way, in the end, the good that came out of it is, number one, I have never known my wife to be the way that she is today. It's foreign. Like, we were away this week, and I was like, I don't even know you. In a good way. It's like, this is not the Michelle that I married. Her body is so radically different, good, I'm talking about good, that it's like almost every 20 minutes, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is shocking. Like, oh my gosh, like seriously, this is happening. Like, you guys, it's a miracle. Like, a miracle. I could talk for hours about it just because how incredible it is. You know, and it brought us closer together. Like, I don't want to be like, you know, thank God for putting Michelle through this situation, but at the same time, I thank God for all the good that came out of it. And I focus on the purpose of God in the midst of all of it that came out of it now, and the fruit that I get to enjoy now out of it is incredible. Is absolutely incredible. And the faithfulness of God throughout the process. If I told you some of the encounters and things that God did throughout the process, I mean, it's just incredible. And I can't help but see anything but good out of this situation. Like, I honestly don't see any bad in the situation. You know, I could look back and I could find something probably, but it's like there's a veil to it. It's like I can only see the goodness of God now. So I'm thankful. And, you know, last week, you know, we left off where Joseph was left in the pit. And he was kind of left in a bad place. Probably had a hard time seeing the good. But let's continue on in this passage. It says here in Genesis 37, verse 25 to 28. I'm going to read it to you. Then we're going to break it down real quick. It says here, then, just as they were sitting down to eat. So now, Joseph's in the pit. He's in this dry cistern, this dry pit, no water in it. And like I said last week, these pits were very narrow at the top. So you could get in, but you couldn't get out without help. So he's stuck. And the brothers that put him into the pit are most likely not going to bring him out of the pit. And so in his mind, he's like, they already hate me. They're already jealous. They've torn my status. They've torn up my leadership. I've got nothing left, got no identity left. No one's even going to know I'm alive. I'm going to sit here and I'm going to die. He probably had a moment like all of us would, wouldn't he? And in that moment, maybe he began to remember the dreams that he had not too long earlier. Maybe he remembered the dreams about, wait a minute, I had these dreams, and I know God spoke to me in these dreams. I know these were God dreams, and I had two dreams. And, when you have two dreams of something very similar, it means, according to the word, it means that God is establishing it in your life. When something happens twice, it's a confirmation, it's an affirmation of a revelation or an understanding that God is giving you for the first time. When it happens twice, it means it's established by God. When it happens 3 times, it means pay very, very close attention, because you're in a now season, okay? So he has these two dreams, and in that moment, like I said, when we defined, in Genesis 37, verse 5, when it says Joseph had a dream, that Hebrew phrase actually means it was bound firmly to him. This dream cloaked him, it wrapped him. In some ways, it was the cloak of many colors, but the spiritual form of it. And although the natural form of his cloak was torn up, he had this spiritual cloak that had enveloped his soul so much to the place that probably in that moment, he had moments of remembering, wait a minute, no, this doesn't seem right. This doesn't seem right. And in those moments, he probably began to see life again. Victory, remember? He began to see victory. Now watch what happens next, verse 25. Then just as they were sitting down to eat, so the brothers are now going to eat. They're going to have a meal. Imagine that. You throw your brother into a pit. It's like, oh, we're hungry. Let's eat together, They sat down to eat. They looked up and saw a caravan of camels in the distance coming toward them. It was a group of Ishmaelite traders taking a load of gum, balm, and aromatic resin from Gilead down to Egypt. Verse 26, Judah said to his brothers, what will we gain by killing our brother? Now remember, Judah actually comes from the same root, if you compare it to the Greek, as Judas. Okay, so Judah, very key, remember this, said to his brothers, what will we gain by killing our brother? We'd have to cover up the crime. Instead of hurting him, let's sell him out to those Ishmaelite traders. After all, he is our brother, our own flesh and blood. And his brothers agreed. So when the Ishmaelites, who were Midianite traders, came by, Joseph's brothers pulled him out of the pit, out of the cistern, and sold him to them for 20 pieces of silver. And the traders took him to Egypt. Interesting, isn't it? Joseph in this moment was sold out. Literally sold out. I mean, he's in the pit, maybe had a glimmer of hope. Now he gets out of the pit, probably has an even bigger glimmer of hope. And he's sold into what we would see as symbolically slavery. He's sold into a place of bondage, sold into a place of oppression. Disconnected, abandoned, rejected by the very people that he loved and called family. I mean, he's going through it, man. He's being wrung out, literally. I mean, he's on the washboard, and like there's nothing else that you can get out of him, and he's done. And he's being sold out. Now, I want to give you 3 quick points to give you a little bit of a sight of some of the elements or things that we have to go through or end up going through as a result of spiritual faith. Now, number one, we're sold out by the world. This is a promise. We're sold out by the world. Joseph literally was sold out by the world closest to him, his family. Every one of us goes through betrayal. You will be. There's a promise that you will be backstabbed. You will be gossiped about. You might have some things written about you that aren't nice. You might feel like people have stabbed you, both front and back. You might feel like people that your best friends betrayed you. Your manager fired you. You've lost everything. Your wife left you. I mean, we all go through hard times like that. You're in a life that really consists of trials and tests. You can't escape it. I was with somebody not too long ago, and they asked me this question. He said, Sean, do you feel like since you became a Christian, like life has become a lot harder? And I actually thought about it, and I'm like, not really, because you see, as a believer, you have a new expectation. So you think and feel like life is hard because your expectation now is life should be always good. When you're not a believer, you have no other paradigm for that. When you've not experienced the light of Jesus Christ and experienced him in relationship, you have no other paradigm than this is just what's normal. You get what I'm saying? Now when you come into an experience with God, you have a new expectation, so that's why things feel or are heightened when things go bad. Well, I shouldn't be depressed because I'm a believer, or I shouldn't be this way because I'm a believer. And we go through the shame, the condemnation. It's even harder because of our faith and our expectation of what should be. So there are more spiritual challenges, but it's not that life has become harder because you've given your life to Jesus. It's that all of a sudden you see the hard times a little more intensely or clearly because you have a new expectation of what should be. And what should be is what's not right now. And so it's hard for you. It's harder to deal with when there's trial. But literally, Joseph was sold out by the world. He was sold out by those that were closest to him, betrayed by his friends and family. He was caught off guard. And oftentimes, this is what happens. You get caught off guard. I know there are consequences to our dumb choices in life. And we end up, maybe we didn't love our wife like we should have, or maybe we didn't invest in our wife or our husband like we should have. And now there's a break. I'm not saying that it's one person's fault only, but if you look back to every hard moment of life, you can find somewhere probably, that was my part. I played a part in that. How many know what I'm talking about? And I'm not saying play the blame game or even blame yourself, but it takes two to tango. I wonder if Joseph did not share his dreams, if the same result would have happened. Because Joseph had this cloak, and that was enough to make his brothers a little mad. I mean, he had this special love from the father. He was the firstborn of Jacob's favorite wife, Rachel, who was dead at this point. And that kind of rubbed his brothers the wrong way, and they were jealous. They didn't like him for that. They were upset about that. But I wonder if he had chose to just keep the cloak but not tell the dreams to his brothers or his family, what would have happened? We can examine it all we want. We can break the scripture down. We can look at it. We can bring a theologian in here and say, well, what do you think? I think it's all speculative because really, in the end, it is what it is. And what happened, happened. And remember, in every situation, there is always a purpose. Whether it's good, bad, or ugly. So whether he said it or not, God would have set him up another way, is what I'm trying to say. And there's always a purpose for whatever situation you come into in life. If you look for the Jesus part of it. Are you with me? See, Jesus was paralleled with this amazing character named Joseph, and we see the life of Jesus actually connecting to Joseph's life in Matthew 26, verse 3 and 4. Because Jesus was also sold out by the world. He was sold out by his very own. The people that he came for, first the Jew, then the Gentile, were the very people that brought him to the cross and crucified him. His very own people rejected him. His very own people did not believe in him. His very own people that had been preparing for his coming for centuries betrayed him and rejected him. Accused him of casting out devils with a devil. Accused him basically of being a devil. Matthew 26, verse 3 and 4 says this, at the same time, the leading priests and elders were meeting at the residence of Caiaphas, the high priest, plotting how to capture Jesus secretly and kill him. I mean, all the people that were involved in the situation, some heathen, but most of them his own people, the Jewish people, coordinated an assault, a betrayal, an attack on one of their own. He was sold out by the world. We're sold out by the world, but we're also, number two, sold out to the world. Everyone say sold out to the world. We may get caught off guard at times. We may get tempted. We all get tempted, okay? Nobody in this room is free from any potential temptation in life. I mean, Peter was like, I'll never be tempted with denying you, Jesus. Basically, that's what he said, right? I'll never deny you. I won't be tempted with that because you can get haughty, confident. I'll never struggle with that. And the very thing he said he would never say never. Justin Bieber said it. Never say never. He said, I'll never. And Jesus is like, actually, bro, by the time the rooster crows, you'll have already denied me 3 times. Whereas John, he bragged about the fact that he was loved by God. He was loved. He was the beloved. He was the one that laid his head on Jesus' breast at the Last Supper. He was one that was super close to Jesus. And look what happened to John. I mean, we don't see John piecing out when everything went bad. I'm not saying he didn't go through probably his struggle, maybe when all that was going down, the crucifixion happened. But John bragged about his love for him. Peter, I'll never get tempted with that. I'll never be sold out to the world. Because when you're sold out to the world, really, you're under its influence. you're under its influence, because we can be sold out by the world, we can be betrayed, we can be hurt, caught off guard, but then we can actually be under the influence of the world, not even really realize it. In addictions, being wrapped up in oppression, and we can really be struggling and not even realize that we're struggling, because that's all we've ever known. And many of you in this room maybe feel like you've been sold out to the world. You feel like you just can't overcome the things that you're facing. Well, Joseph felt like that probably in the moment when he was actually sold out by his brothers. He was sold out to a worldly system. Egypt, symbolic of a worldly system, a sin-driven system, an oppression, a system of oppression, like a Babylonian system. Because slavery is sin. Paul said, when he's talking about the cross and Jesus in Galatians, he says over and over again, and in Romans, I'm no longer a slave to sin, but I'm a slave to righteousness. Joseph's being sold into Egypt, which is depicted as a place of sin, slavery, bondage. He's being sold out literally to the world. Genesis 37:28. So when the Ishmaelites, who were Midianite traders, came by, Joseph's brothers pulled him out of the cistern and sold him to them for 20 pieces of silver. And the traders took him to Egypt. Because that's what, listen, when we let money rule our lives, we're sold out to the system. Money sold him out. Money sold him out. The false sense of happiness, the false sense of hope that we all sometimes struggle with, right? If I just had a little more, maybe it'd be a little easier. I'd be a little more happy. There's that temptation that can come on and off at times when you're going through a hard time. If I just had a little more, if I just worked a little harder, if I just put a little more time in, maybe I feel a little more happy. And we end up getting sold out to the system, sold out into slavery for some money, for a false sense of hope, a false sense of life. And who was it that sold him out? It was Judah. It was Judah. Who sold out Jesus? Judas in the New Testament. For how much? 30 pieces of silver. Judas sold Joseph, his own brother, out for 20 pieces of silver into slavery. Judas sold Jesus, his master, for 30 pieces of slavery. But guess what? Even within that, there was a purpose. There was a purpose. And we see that in Matthew 26. I'm not going to read all of it, but about the story of really him being betrayed. And we look at Jesus or Judas in this passage as well. Matthew 26, you can read that. But not only are we sold out by the world and to the world, but number 3, we're sold out for the world. Because even in the midst of this sellout process that Joseph went through by his very own people for 20 pieces of silver, Joseph, he was literally being sold out to his purpose, and none of them even knew it. Because listen, whatever bad situation you find yourself in, if God is your central focus, God will create or show you the purpose in the midst of the painful process if you choose to see Him. You with me this morning? You got to see it though. It can be the most painful, struggling, you're addicted, there's a stronghold over your life, there's oppression, whatever. And you're like, how could this ever turn out to be good? Well, there's a promise in Romans 8 that God will bring good into every situation for those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. It's a promise. So there's always a purpose. There's always a reason. Joseph was sold out for the world. It says in Genesis 45:4, verse 11. I want to read the scripture to you because some of you have been going through a hard time. Some of you have been blaming this season that you're in on somebody else. Some of you have been playing the blame game. Some of you might have been playing, well, if he didn't do that to me, if that didn't happen back there, if I didn't have that breakup with this friend, this relationship, if I didn't get fired from that job, if I didn't do this, if that manager was a better manager, if he was a worse manager, or whatever the situation may be, you may think that right now you're in a place because of somebody else. But this is the thing. This is how I want to rearrange your thinking today. That if you are in relationship with God, whatever the case may be, there is always a purpose. Okay, so God, I I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand where I'm at. I don't understand what's going on, but there must be a purpose as to why I'm here, because I don't believe, God, that you've abandoned me. I don't believe, God, that you're the author of confusion. So if I'm going through something, it doesn't matter what people have done to me. It doesn't matter what people have said about me. I am where I am because God wants me where I am, because I trust God, and He is the I am. So if He is the I am, I can be also, I am Sean, identify with Christ, and I am here for a reason. I am here for a purpose. So watch this. Joseph, fast forward, okay? I haven't even gone through some of the harder spots or points in his life at this point, but fast forward all the way kind of to the end. And Joseph finally releases his identity to his brothers years and years later. This is way over 20 years later. And he's at this spot where his brothers think he's dead. His dad thinks he's dead. Everyone thinks he's dead. And now there's a great famine in the land, and they're all coming to Egypt. His family's coming to Egypt. The whole nation of Israel's coming to Egypt to get food, get supply from the storehouses. Joseph's in charge of this, and he sees his brothers approaching. He recognizes them. They don't recognize him. And he had gone through so much trial. I mean, so much hurt, so much pain. He'd played the blame game for years. He'd be like, it was their fault that I'm here. It was their fault that I went through this, betrayed, sold into slavery, sold into sin, put in jail, falsely accused. In the end, it was their fault. Now watch this. Watch what God does and had done in Joseph's life at this point. Genesis 45, verse 4 to 11. Please, talking to his brothers, come closer. I just wept when I read this verse a few weeks ago. He said to them, so they came closer. And he said again, imagine this. You finally reveal who you are to the people that you once blamed for everything bad in your life. But now you're in a good place, and they don't even know you're alive, and you finally reveal, it's like the big reveal, who you are. I am Joseph, your brother, whom you sold into slavery in Egypt, verse 5. But don't be upset. Oh, I love that. And don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. In other words, don't worry, your gossip, the pain you've caused me, the betrayal that you put into my life, all the false accusation, all the hardship when I was in prison, having no more family, being rejected, going through inner healing with Dr. Joan Stinson for 20 years because I've been rejected by my own family. I don't blame you. Watch this. Don't be angry with yourselves for selling me to this place. Listen to this. It was God who sent me here ahead of you to preserve your lives. Because just like Jesus, who was sent to the earth to preserve our spiritual life, Joseph, in the midst of all the pain of his process in the waiting room, was sent to save their lives. So it wasn't you that betrayed me, really. It wasn't you that did all those things for me. It was God who set me up. And I choose to believe that there's always a purpose. God sold me out, literally. Verse 6, this famine that has ravaged the land for 2 years will last 5 more years. And there will be neither plowing nor harvesting. God has sent me ahead of you to keep you and your families alive and preserve many survivors. So it was God who sent me here, not you. I love that. It was God. You did not do anything to get me where I am, even in the bad place that I once was. It was God. You're like, wait a minute, but isn't that bad theology? Because why would God do that? No, we live a life surrounded by bad. Remember, God can come into every bad situation. And there is a purpose in every hard situation. Joseph chose to see the good or the God in his situation. Verse 8, so it was God who sent me here, not you. And he is the one who made me an advisor to Pharaoh, the manager of this entire palace, and the governor of all Egypt. Basically, my dreams have been fulfilled. Boom! That's what he said, basically. This is a living dream right now. You've all come, you've bowed before me, just like when I was 17 years old. I was in the waiting room for years, and now we're here, boys. This is it. I've been sent to help you preserve your life, just like Jesus. I love this here, verse 9. Now hurry back to my father and tell him, this is what your son Joseph says. God has made me master over all the land of Egypt. So come down to me immediately. You can live in the region of Goshen, where you can be near me with all your children and grandchildren, your flocks and herds, and everything you own. I will take care of you there, for there are still 5 years of famine ahead of us. Otherwise you, your household, and your animals will starve. I have been sent to preserve your lives, and as a result, you're gonna get blessed, and you're gonna become highly favored, and you didn't deserve any of it. Just like what Jesus came to give you and I. We were full of sin, sold out to the world, by the world, full of oppression, full of darkness. Jesus comes and gives you everything you do not deserve.